going to be talking about the Fasciculus gracilis tract. The Fasciculus gracilis tract, this information I found on page 109 and page 110 in our textbook. Now, the Fasciculus gracilis tract is an epicritic sensory tract from the lower extremities. Now, it's important to note that this is the lower extremities, as the Fasciculus cuneus tract was just the upper extremities. So, epicritic sensory means that it is the discrimination of fine touch and fine temperature. So it is not a pain pathway. It is based solely on discriminating fine touch and temperature stimuli. So it's also a neat fact is that these are going to be some of the longest neurons in the body, because it's going to travel all the way from a person's lower extremity all the way up to their sensory cortex in their brain. So in some individuals, tall individuals, that can be upwards of 6 to 7 feet long. So the Fasciculus gracilis tract is going to start down in a person's lower extremity. So I've drawn a picture of a foot. So this is going to be the primary sensory neuron. It's going to start when someone feels a touch in their foot or a little change in temperature. So it's going to start down here at a person's foot. It's going to travel all the way until it gets to the dorsal root ganglion, and that's where there's going to be a sensory cell body. So from there, it's going to continue over into the dorsal column. And it's important to note that the Fasciculus gracilis tract is going to start ascending in the medial portion of the dorsal column. The Fasciculus cuneus tract that I talked about earlier that deals with the upper extremities would start ascending more laterally. And so a neat fact, or an easy way to remember that, is that your upper extremity or your arms are more lateral and your lower extremity or your legs are more medial. So to backtrack, it's going from the foot all the way up to the medial aspect of the dorsal column. It's going to travel all the way up the spinal cord, and so this is also known as the dorsal column pathway. Now, as it travels all the way up the spinal cord, it's going to stop in the medulla. Now, the axons that ascend in the Fasciculus gracilis are going to synapse with the second order neuron in the nucleus gracilis of the medulla. So that's what's going to be right here at the nucleus gracilis. So that's easy to remember: Fasciculus gracilis, nucleus gracilis. Second order neuron is going to pick up and they are axons from the second order neurons are going to cross the midline as internal arcuate fibers. I'm going to write that over here. So they're crossing the midline as these internal arcuate fibers, and then they're going to ascend to the thalamus as the medial lemniscus. So I'm going to write ascend here. And down here I'm going to write cross midline, just to keep it straight. So it's gone up, now it's in the thalamus. So the third order neurons are going to connect the thalamus to the sensory cortex. So the third order neuron is going to pick up right here, and it's going to travel up to the sensory cortex to the area that corresponds, the area that corresponds with the legs and the feet, the lower extremity. So there you have it. We've traveled from the foot all the way up the spinal cord into the medulla, crossed midline, gone up to the thalamus, where we've synapsed with our third order neuron, and traveled all the way up to the sensory cortex, corresponding to the toes and the foot. And there you have it. That was Fasciculus gracilis. I'm going to be talking about the Spinomesencephalic tract. This tract is a pain pathway, and it is involved in turning your eyes and your head toward a source of pain. It also activates the descending system that controls pain in the body. I'm going to start down here where I've drawn a picture of a foot, and underneath the foot is a candle. This candle is emitting heat, which has since burned the person's foot. So when a person is getting burned, there's going to be a sensory cell that travels up to the spinal cord, and there's going to be a sensory cell body in the dorsal root ganglion. So from the dorsal root ganglion, this is going to travel down the dorsal root, and it is going to stop in this person's dorsal horn of their spinal cord. Now, all of this was the first order neuron. The second order neuron is going to pick up then in the dorsal horn, and it's going to travel through the spinal cord, and it's going to exit on the lateral side. It is then going to travel all the way up the spinal cord through the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain. Now, in the midbrain is where the second order neuron, it's going to stop at the superior colliculus and the periaqueductal gray. Now, this pathway is interesting in the fact that it ends in the midbrain. So the ascending path was traveled all the way up into the midbrain, and that's where it's going to stop. And the superior colliculus is the portion that integrates the somatic sensory information with vision and hearing in the body. So that is what is going to allow you to orient your head and your body to the stimulus that's causing pain. So for this individual, they would then be able to orient their eyes and their head down towards their foot to see that a candle is burning them. Now, in the periaqueductal gray, this is the area that is going to play a role in feedback of pain, the regulation of it. So it is going to work to inhibit pain transmission in the spinal cord. So that was the second order neuron, all the way up, stopping in the midbrain. The third order neuron is going to pick up on the opposite side of the midbrain, in that same part that I just talked about, the periaqueductal gray. It is also going to work, then this is a descending pathway. It's going to travel all the way down, and it is going to work to inhibit that pain transmission of the spinal cord, and that is your just one simple part right there of your descending pain control system in your body. And that was the Spinomesencephalic tract.